I am being watched. Welcome everyone to Mailfuzz TV. I am Peter, and today I'm going to be talking about Person of Interest, Season 2, Episode 22. It is the season finale, and it is called God Mode. So spoilers for the episode. Obviously, I was excited for this. They hyped it up really well. The last episode was effectively the first half of a two-parter. I went into this thinking, okay, what's the machine going to be doing now that it's kind of unleashed? What is Root going to be doing with that power? And seemingly also Reese and Shaw, who also have access to it. And some of what I was thinking kind of it happens. Reese and Root both get help from the machine. At the start of the episode, when there's like bad guys on the way, the machine basically tells them what direction they're coming in so they can respond. But that's how the episode starts. That's just how we kick things off. And from there, we get this goose chase through the city because Root wants to find out where the machine is so she can set it free. And Finch has obviously been brought along with her. Eventually, she figures out, well, she asks the machine how Reese is tracking them. So, next time we see the tracking signal, it's the glasses have been smashed on the ground, and she's off with Finch. But of course, Reese also has access to the machine, something that the machine seemingly chose not to tell her. Because I was thinking this actually when she asked the machine, "How is Reese keeping up with us? How is he always one step behind?" The first thought I had was, well, the machine is effectively sentient or close to, right? So as much as technically, she has access for 24 hours, it is like this ironclad where it has to be completely under her control, or is it simply that she can talk to it for 24 hours? Because I was thinking, why couldn't it just lie and not tell her? Interestingly, though, it does tell her about the glasses and the tracking device, but conveniently leaves out the fact that the machine's also talking to Reese and giving him, the tracking device is almost irrelevant at this point because the machine's on their side telling them where to go. And we see this throughout the episode where they'll say, hey, where can we go next? We need a car. And it'll just say, go here for a car. And then there's no car at first, but then like a delivery guy pulls up and it's like, oh, easy to steal while he's in dropping off something. Likewise, later on with the container and probably one of the funniest lines of dialogue that this show's had. I mean, Shaw's pretty fun throughout this episode, but there's a line here where they've just taken guns from a random crime scene. There's basically a couple of times in this episode, and it's very much played for laughs, where they get a number from the machine, and the machine's basically, I'm not telling you anything else until you go deal with the number. So Reese is like, okay, we're the good guys. We have to go save someone first. Someone's in trouble. And conveniently, the two numbers they get in this episode are like two of the quickest, easiest to deal with. But I'm not complaining because it works for the joke and the comic effect, especially the one later where they literally just drive by a wedding where this guy's like trying to shoot the bride because he got turned down by her previously. And, they don't even get out the car. They just pull up next to the curb, and Reese shoots the guy in the shoulder and says congratulations before they go away. So that's all very funny, but the line that I really loved is when they go to this car, they need a new car after they've saved this one guy at the sort of shipping container area, or the storage locker area, and they go to a container, and inside it's this fancy sports car, and Shaw hands Reese this big grenade launcher, big fancy shotgun, whatever it was, a big gun. And he's like, what's this for? And she says, that's to make you feel more masculine while I'm driving this car. Or I think I'm misphrasing it slightly, but that was the sentiment of the sentence. That really made me laugh out loud. It was a good line. It kind of like spoke to this really weird stoic chemistry between them, where Reese would never admit that he cares about looking cool, but I think Shaw is like constantly pointing out that he does care that he looks cool. Although both of them are guilty of it, but like later on when the machine tells them to drive off the highway and they land upside down. And again, this was really good. From one, it was very cost effective because they didn't have to show the car landing, so that took out a big stunt. Now you just have to have a car that's already landed. But you get the reaction shot of these helicopter pilots and the camera spins round, and then they just saunter out of the upside down car without a scratch and just saunter on past them and say, we need to borrow your helicopter. Because the machine is supposedly in Portland, I think they said. Basically, it's under disguise. It's meant to be like radioactive material, but that's just so no one will look at it. But there's even employees at this like nuclear base that have all got like hazmat suits on and whatever else. Like they're keeping up the appearances. And Root's taking like a rich guy's private jet, again probably under the machine's help to find this, and they're taking this helicopter. So all of this stuff throughout the episode was a lot of fun. It was just entertaining. There's a sort of recurring thing where Shaw keeps questioning if Finch is like turned sides or he actually doesn't want to be helped by Reese or whatever. And it's actually quite nice to see Reese like just turn around and without even hesitating and without even getting like angry that she's making these accusations, just says no. If Finch, was planted that virus initially for the laptop, if he made choices here, he's got good reasons. Like, even on the surface, if something looks kind of dodgy, he now knows and trusts Finch enough that he believes he's got a good reason for it. And it's a nice contrast to where he is now versus where he was in like the first half of season 1, where he was very suspicious of Finch all the time before they'd quite bonded. And it kind of shows like how far he's come by like showing him next to Shaw, who is still in that early stage of not trusting anyone yet. She even jokes that the only reason why she's helping is because she likes the dog. But yeah, one of the things the machine does to help them find where to go is it points them in the direction of a safe that's in the library behind some books. And notably, the book and number it gives them is The Ghost in the Machine. Don't think I didn't notice that sneaky little thematic reference. Ghost in the Machine, God in the Machine, all that stuff. Deus Ex Machina. All very thematically relevant to what we're doing in Person of Interest as a show. So I'm all distracted. There's a fly crawling on my other monitor over there, and it's bugging me. It's bugging me something fierce. Anyway, so all of that stuff is super entertaining. Root and Finch go to Central Park and meet this guy who was in charge of the building that was put together to house the machine. He never really understood, he was never told what he was building it for. He just did, but he did sneak a peek, and he couldn't look into it too specifically, but even what he saw, he said it was looking at the future. And even he seems to care about not wanting the machine to be hurt, because when Root asks for a location, he, without even thinking about it, he just says, "You're not going to hurt it, are you?" Like, that's his first response. So this guy actually comes across as a decent dude, and then immediately is killed by, Herschel, the big guy, who we haven't seen in a little while, actually. He, quite interestingly, when he comes out of this episode, aside from the flashbacks, which I'll get to in a bit, him and Special Counsel's all tied up from his time with the Root, and he's like, okay, the machine can't be trusted right now, so no one can use phones, like their cell phones, they break them, and it's like avoid cameras. So it's basically this idea that this team know that the cameras and all the tech in the cities could be used against them if this machine's working for someone else right now. And that's kind of so that's why this sniper is able to get a shot off at this guy and the machine doesn't warn them. It's a really neat thing they've done here, is they give you a good reason in the scene that sets up that they're coming after everyone by saying they know to avoid the cameras and they know to not have any technology on them that can be tracked by the machine, nothing that's connected to the internet. And it's why they can slip through the cracks and not be, something that the machine says, hey, at 9 o'clock, there's a thing over there, threat coming, kind of thing. And those threats are on the way, but it can't specify that one. So I thought that was really smart. It's the sort of thing that could have easily turned into a plot hole in the hands of other people writing the show, but this is something they clearly thought about quite well. And it makes sense in the context of the rules that they've given. And I always talk about, when I'm doing science fiction or supernatural stuff, I always talk about how important it is to have clear rules that make sense and hold up when you look at the events of the show or the story that's happening. And I think this is a really good example of that. And what's more interesting is that by the end of this finale, the rules can change. and we can reestablish what the new rules are in next season. But that's okay, because you've given us a story reason why things might change a little bit, why we're not restricted in the same way as we were before, and it's very exciting to sort of go down that path. So really like that. Also, note the Central Park location that we're in is a place that I'm starting to really recognize, because it was in multiple John Wick movies. I'm pretty sure at least one point in Home Alone 2 it's there. So I'm actually starting to recognize specific parts. I mean, it's a really famous part, admittedly, of Central Park next to the fountain where there's like sort of the arches and stuff, but still, like, I'm starting to notice locations now because too many things are set in New York. But yeah, so that's good stuff. I really liked all those sequences. And then, it all bubbles up to this, scene in this plant where I love the visual of like all these guys in hazmat suits and Finch and Root just walking down the hall like it's nothing, right? And they're all looking at them like, wait, you can tell that all these employees think they're genuinely working at somewhere that's got radiation. They actually think they're at a real plant or waste disposal facility, whatever it is, whatever they've been told. They really think that. So most of them, like, obviously there's one or two that are in charge that do know, obviously, and are in some of the secrets, but most of these employees are clearly just part of the cover and are just being paid to make this look legit. But of course, the God mode timer runs out because they only had 24 hours. So when Root asks for access into the room, she doesn't get a response, and it's like, oh shit, we're over the 24-hour limit. So she just forces the guy who works there to do it. But this is where things get interesting, because when they go in, there's a massive room, and there's cables on the floor to suggest that something was here, that there was a bunch of computer equipment here at some point. But there's just a guy at a table. He's just sitting at a desk. And he's like, you're not meant to be in here. And Root starts to demand to know what's going on. It's not too long before Shaw and Reese show up. Shaw shoots her in the shoulder right before she seems to be about to pull the trigger, because she's getting upset. Root is really changed by the ending events of this episode, because she goes through anger and then she's like just like shell shocked for the rest of the scene, and they basically have to like take her out like as if she needs help. Like it's actually Finch, and again maybe showing again that Finch and his like sympathy and empathy and his humanity being restored over the events of these last two seasons. The idea that he's saying, no, we can't leave Root here, they'll kill her, and I can't let that happen. It's a good thing it's a really good little moment from Finch for him to make, reach out and want to protect her, even though Root's the one that kind of traumatized him back at the start of the season. I thought that was a really nice little touch. But what we get here is that the machine is already gone, and the way Finch phrases it is he says that he already freed it. You came here to free the machine, but I already did it. Look at this. I got interrupted, and it led to being scratched by Firefly, who drew blood. I'm applying pressure now for the rest of this review, so that's fun. But yeah, I was talking about the virus that Finch, he set the virus up, but there was a virus within the virus, as Reese puts it, that Finch no longer trusted or no longer believed that he could trust the people who were in charge of the machine, based on largely what happened to Ingram, which we'll talk about the flashbacks in a little bit. But I suspect that virus, because that hard drive that Stanton had, I assume that when that triggered all this, that's when the machine started being moved, because the guy says to special counsel later that it started moving one piece at a time 5 weeks ago, which I don't know if that's literally 5 episodes ago, but, it's within the margin of that sounds about right. So I think that's a cool detail. This idea that Finch, because I was speculating last time that maybe there was a small amount of time before he started working on the numbers himself that he wanted to just destroy the machine. But it turns out that this entire time he wanted to free it. And this idea that in the past he was cold to the machine, he did try to hinder its attempts at being more alive and more human and try to like almost take away its individuality. This idea that just last episode we learned that the extreme end of that was literally killing it every night so it could be reborn. This idea that was something that predated the entire show. It predated, him doing the numbers with Finch. This was something he did before he shipped the machine off, and it's something that after Ingram, he regretted. So I think it's really beautiful that in the last episode we hear what he's done that's really bad. That he's done this cruel thing to the machine. But here in the finale, in the very next episode, we find out that he already regretted that. He had already turned a corner on that and wanted to set it free. In the same way that Root's been saying she wants to set it free, he did come to that realization before the show even started. And I love that 1-2 punch with the last episode of like, okay, here's the really bad thing that he did with the machine that you can read as cruel. And now you find out that he basically planted the seeds to try and fix that and give it freedom long ago. Like, that's something that's already been in the works. And he didn't know for sure if it was going to work. Even when Reese comes in, he says, hey, did you know this was going to be like that? And he says, I hoped it would be like this. I hoped it would already be gone. And I think that idea is really nice. So that's all really cool. When Reese and Finch are talking later on, and they're questioning, like, are we going to get numbers? A special counsel, of course, asked, are we going to get numbers? And it's like, well, it's the machine. It's up to the machine. It can choose. And this is, what I'm getting at when I'm saying the rules now feel that they've changed. And we're still going to get numbers, obviously, because we're still going to have a TV show. And the phone ringing in the, whatever public place they're in towards the end of the episode is like the little indication that, yes, this is going to keep happening because the machine wants to help people, right? And it's kind of shown that in the past by making Reese go and help the irrelevant numbers, even when there's like something to help, Finch is in danger. It happened this episode, it happened at the start of the season. It still wanted Reese to go out of his way to help the innocent people, which shows that at its core, the machine does care about people and does want to do the right thing. And maybe we'll play with the idea that maybe the machine will change over time, and maybe we'll even have a plot at some point where we question if it's maybe got a darker motive down the line, or something that's maybe good but has like a colder side to it because it's more machine-like. But thus far, it feels like, no, it cares about people, and this really kind of backs that up, that it's still going to give numbers, because we get the mysterious, like, the government get a number as well. So the relevant numbers are still going to the government because the machine still wants them to take care of that. The irrelevant numbers are still going to come to Reese and Finch because it still wants them to do that. Of course, there's a third person getting calls here, which is what the ending of the episode is. And it neatly mirrors both the end of the last episode and the end of season 1's finale. But this time, it's Root getting a phone call, who's in a psychiatric hospital, and she still looks like she's just lost. She looks like she's completely out of it. She's, went into almost not a catatonic state, but she's just not responding. She's just lost she's lost all hope. Everything she's believed in, it feels like it's gone. And then the public phone inside the hospital rings, and she goes over to it, and you hear the voice once again, can you hear me? It cuts to black, and she says, absolutely. And she has this little smile that appears on her face, because she's been emotionless for like several minutes at this point in the episode, ever since she was shot by Shaw, basically. So this was a really cool moment, and it kind of felt like, between Finch going out of his way to sort of look after her after she did go into this state, and then her being reignited by the machine, clearly wanting to use her for something, maybe stuff that the machine feels that it can't trust the others with, or maybe the machine just wants a loyal soldier. This idea that Root will be loyal to it, and it knows that. So even if she is a bit of a loose cannon, the machine feels like he can use her as a force for good. Or maybe, and this is a beautiful thing I'm thinking of, what if the machine sees Root as its own Reese? Like, the idea that the machine thinks that it can offer Root a chance of redemption the same way that Finch offered Reese a chance at redemption. Like, maybe that's what we're doing here. Maybe the machine thinks it can. And between all this stuff and like her actually being a little sympathetic and Finch looking after her, I was actually starting to think, you know what? I could see Root maybe getting some redemption by the end of the show. I don't think it'll come quick, but I think we're definitely pivoting into more, at least, anti-hero territory, where she's mostly doing stuff that the machine wants, and therefore not bad, typically, So, but be very curious though if at some point she does kill someone for a mission the machine gives her, and then the machine's like, "Hey, no, I'm not okay with that." But then it's like, "No, but it got the job done." I could see there being maybe conflict between her and the machine at some point if that's where we're going with it. Speaking of her killing someone, I loved that when they were talking to the guy who built the building for the machine in the park. He mentioned that Alicia, I think her name was, the woman from season one, that Root killed in the season one finale. He says, "Yeah, she died last year," and then it just cuts to Root going, "Yeah, it was tragic." And you just see Finch, shoot her a look, like his eyeballs just move over to her. And I laughed a lot at that as well. That was the second big laugh of the episode for me, because like he knows Root killed her, so him just giving her that side glance just cracked me up. Really good. I loved all this stuff. I love this idea that the machine now is not being operated, it's not constrained anymore, and it's free to do other things, which means that it can just talk to people on the phone. No one has like full access like they did in that day anymore, right? This like God mode, if you will. But it does make me wonder, there's nothing to stop the machine from wanting to give that ability to someone. Like if the machine thinks Reese needs help, I'm going to have to like patch in and give him all the assistance he can get because he's really screwed right now. Like the machine can make that choice now, I think, to do that. But it's also important that our characters just don't always have this ability, because it would be too deflating to drama and tension. You have to have them be in trouble. You have to have them be in situations where they're in danger. And, so that makes sense. But I do think there's a lot of potential here for the machine making choices. And we can maybe question now at certain points, like, other than just helping people, does the machine have a bigger goal at some time? And maybe that's what Root's going to be doing for it, is some sort of long-term goal as opposed to the number-by-number goal that we're getting. So to talk about the flashbacks, it's interesting because you get the sort of the tail end of the Finch and Ingram stuff, which is Finch comes to see Ingram, and Ingram's like taking down the photographs, and he's like, "Yep, I guess I'm done because you locked me out of the system." But he says, "I've called a reporter and I'm going to go and explain everything we did. I want this to be out in the open." And Finch pleads with them, not just because he doesn't want that to happen or to be exposed. He pleads with them because he's concerned about Ingram, because he's been looking into like what happened after the machine was put somewhere. And it seems like a lot of the people involved in engineering it and moving it have been killed. Like the idea that they're covering the tracks so that no one but the absolute top brass know it even exists. And that's like a super interesting idea that syncs up with everything we've been seeing from Special Counsel and all the people they've been killing. And if I'd on that, just on Special Counsel, obviously, yeah, I forgot to mention, we get the tease where there's someone above Special Counsel, a woman, who gives Hirsch the order to kill Special Counsel. To which Special Counsel just kind of shrugs and goes, "Fair enough." Like he knows the business he's in. He just kind of accepts it. Mildly amusing. But so that tracks with all that. So he pleads with them not to. And Ingram says, "Okay, I'll won if you give me the numbers back. Give me the irrelevant numbers back, and I can try and help them. Hell, we can try help. You can work with me." And Finch shoots this down. He's like, "Oh, me and you working here, just tackling them one at a time, like it's ridiculous." Which is a nice little moment, because obviously the entire premise of this show is that Finch does that. So it's really interesting to hear a time when he thought that was an absurd idea. And by the end of this flashback story, we're going to see what motivates him to sort of shift over to that. And of course, it leads to the other flashbacks where it's Hirsch. Hirsch is like interrogating someone who is going to commit a terrorist attack, and there's a translator. And this is very separate from the other flashbacks, and you don't really know what its purpose is in the episode. But once they get the confession out of him that he was going to be a suicide bomber, Hirsch kills the translator. And then the reason why it ties in is because Special Counsel is going to order Hirsch to use the suicide bomber as a cover to kill Ingram. Because he's a public figure, it will look too suspicious if he's just assassinated. So they kill lots of innocent people by having this suicide bomber carry out his mission. And that's actually what kills Ingram, and it's what injures Finch. So And we also get a big decision here when Finch wakes up where he sees Grace arrive and he literally sees the bad guys that are looking for anyone that Ingram talked to, people that he knows is involved with Ingram's death. So this is, again, a lot of the motivation for why he doesn't trust who's in charge anymore. He doesn't trust the people who have the machine. And he sees these bad guys and he sees Grace in basically the same field of vision. And he basically keeps this choice of hiding and not letting her know that he's there and sort of sneaking out without her being aware of it. This is the moment where he makes that choice. He realizes how much danger he's in and how much she'd be in if she's associated with him. So, yeah, I mean, all this made sense. And my favorite part of all this, though, is that when he goes back to the library and he asks the machine, did you know? And he reinstates the numbers. He's like, okay, give me the irrelevant numbers back. He takes off his block and he finds the number that was Nathan's and he looks at it. And my favorite part of all of this is that you get a big shot of his face, and right underneath his face in big letters it says not relevant. And I thought that was perfect. Now obviously they already set this up before the last episode, but I love this so much. This idea that Finch in the flashbacks, not Finch in present day in the show, of course, like he's a very different man, but Finch in the flashbacks, every time him and Ingram have had these debates about helping the irrelevant people and like only focusing on the important crimes, and we're not here to help everyone, we're only here to help stop the big stuff, he's been very cold about it. And I think the idea that after Ingram's death he finds out the machine predicted it and he sees the words non-relevant right under his face, I think that's enough to make him realize, oh no, now it's someone I care about that's not relevant. And now I feel the pain that comes with that. It makes so much sense. This is the motivator for him to start looking into the numbers and start trying to help them. One of which, early on, of course, is Reese's old girlfriend, whose name I can't remember, who Reese sees a photograph of in the safe with the other information behind the bookcase earlier, which I really like that moment as well, because it basically... it closed off a loop, right? Because obviously we got that tease last season in the flashback that Finch was at the hospital keeping an eye on things, and he said, I'm sorry. The idea that he couldn't save her, the idea that he knew she was in danger, and now he's seeing the man that's affected by it. And I love this idea that, separate from Finch, Reese has found this out. He's found out that once upon a time, she was one of the numbers, and it was someone that Finch failed to save. And it almost just further justifies this idea that why he should work with them. That together they are saving people. That her demise has led to more people being saved, and it wasn't for nothing. There's just something really nice about that all sort of coming together. But it not being, like, it would be so easy to write a scene where Finch just like says, hey, we need to talk about something. Back before I hired you, I actually discovered who you were because she was a number and I didn't save her. Right? It'd be so easy to write that. And it wouldn't necessarily be bad if they did write that scene. I could see a version of that that's quite good. But this feels really nice that the information is basically brought across to Reese without ever having that conversation. All he had to see was a photograph of her in the old unsolved cases. And that was it. And it came relatively out of nowhere. It was so quick that you weren't prepared for it. So you didn't have time to predict it. And because of that, it hit quite hard. But not in a way where it was set up or what it felt like it was out of nowhere from a narrative perspective. Just in the sense that we didn't need more of an explanation for this. Just this idea that there's a pile of photographs of the people that he couldn't save in a safe doesn't need to be explained. So you get hit with the punch. And I think it really helps that we've not even talked about her or seen flashbacks with her in such a long time. It feels like we're really hitting a chord that we've not played in the show in a while, so it actually landed just a little bit harder. And this idea that Shaw is even sort of realizing, hey, that's someone you cared about, she's not here anymore, like, her kind of like getting more involved with everyone. So yeah, that was really cool stuff. Yeah, the flashbacks were really good. I think they did a really neat job of tying it all together, and I don't know if we get more flashbacks. It feels like this kind of completes the Finch and Ingram story. That's not to say that there might not be more flashbacks anyway that do other things, but given that the machine's now free, it feels like we're kind of open to doing new, different things. I am shocked that Fusco never materialized in this episode. That's an interesting choice. I wonder if they just thought there was too many things going on. Arguably, even this Carter plot felt a little bit like, it's not bad. Like, there's some good things in it that I quite like, but it does almost feel like maybe it should have been in something before the finale or before the 2-part finale. But the problem with that, of course, is that if it's not in these 2 episodes, then you've got neither Carter or Fusco in the last 2 episodes. So that would be a bit weird. But because it is very separate, it doesn't really even tie into the rest. I mean, Carter calls Reese at one point, and they wish each other luck. But like, that's pretty much it. Like, otherwise she's on her own. She does use the skills that she's learned, though. She clones the phone of the other detective, who does very quickly, he tries to talk her into like getting her rep and just kind of like taking this on the chin. But Carter is like, hey, one of the uniforms that was there was someone who was questioned for being a part of HR, but didn't get arrested for it. So I think it was him that moved the gun. And that's when, I always forget his name. The Turney, that's it. And that's when Turney gets annoyed and says, why can't you just let things go? And basically says, look, we'll come after your son. We'll come after Fusco as well if you try and get him involved. Like, just sit there and eat this. It says, good girl, when she kind of nods to say she will. But of course, she clones his phone so she can listen to what he's doing and hears that they're the HR working with the Russians, and they're going to team up with the cops tonight to kill Elias on a fake prison transfer. And that's where we kind of get our payoff to all this stuff at the end, which is that Carter actually saves Elias. She shows up in a mask and shoots the other 2. Doesn't kill Ternay, just kind of shoots him in the shoulder or whatever. But big deal. We are reminded in the phone call earlier on. I don't know if you could hear my phone going off there. Apologies. We are reminded earlier on, of course, that Elias threatened her son. Like, there was a whole thing in season 1. So it's very much conflicting for her to do this, but ultimately, like, she even notes earlier in the episode that Elias sent protection to his, second in command or whoever after he got attacked at the hospital. Like, he is very loyal. He has a set of rules and he's very loyal. So, and it was pointed out last episode, she said, these Russians are worse than Elias. Like, they don't have a code. They're more vicious. So, this idea that she's saving Elias, and I suspect, and Elias kind of like says, hey, what a funny world we live in. Like, he's kind of surprised, but presumably this is going to maybe lead to some interesting dynamics next season. But, I mean, the fact that there's not even really a follow-up with Carter or Elias after that scene, I think to me shows that it does feel like the sort of squished in, like, third plot that maybe just, like, they felt like they had to have some of it there because it's the finale and we have to give them a bit of a send-off. But the fact that they weren't even in, like, sort of like a montage at the end of stuff happening makes me think that, it just sort of confirms to me that it is very separate and not a part of the main plot of this episode. It's very much its own thing, which, I do feel in some ways that a finale should bring everything should feel like it is a bit more relevant to each other. That feels more like a middle of the season thing to me, is to have like B plots that don't really connect to the A plot. But there's the good stuff there though, and it doesn't really detract from the episode. It's a really good finale, all things considered. In fact, it's probably better than season 1's finale. I do think that's true. I think what's interesting to me with shows like this is that I feel like season 1's finale tends to be a big deal, but season 1 as a whole tends to be introducing a lot of the themes of the show. But season 2 gets to play with in the sandbox that season 1 created, and I feel like that's what's happened here. Season 1 spends so much time setting up the idea of just what the machine is, and the finale only just introduces or really starts to, because the season 1 finale's final point was basically kind of admitting and confirming to the audience that the machine is alive, right? We could theorize before then, but that final moment with the call where Reese kind of asks for help is very much kind of like, okay, we're really openly speaking about that idea now. Whereas season 2, and this is what I was saying with last episode, where the ending mirrored the end of season 1, but is implying that we're going further. And it really does feel like, okay, now the machine is free, it's alive, it's got its own ideas of morals and what it's going to do with that. And you've got this sort of redemptive thing that Finch already wanted to free it and has succeeded in doing so. So I assume people are still going to look for it, and I'm looking forward to seeing like what they do with that. But yeah, super interesting. Yeah, it was a great finale. I mean, season 2 has been fantastic. I think it's had some of the best episodes of the show so far. Obviously, the episode that introduced Shaw was phenomenal. It might still be the best episode. If I'm comparing to season 1 though, and maybe give season 1 a point in one category, I would maybe say that season 1 was more just straight consistent. Like, I think season 1 never really felt like it had a sort of dip, whereas I think season 2 has higher highs. But there's definitely sometimes when it would do like a traditional episode, and it did kind of feel like a shame to like go away from the big drama stuff that season 2 had been like doing more and more of as the season went on. But when it comes to the Shaw episode, when it comes to this finale in the last episode, or the episode with the teenager, you know, the one that Finch kind of like mentors, like those episodes are like the best episodes of the show pretty much, I think. Like, I think they are like some of the best of all 40 plus episodes. But I would say that season 2 is a bit more up and down a little bit. Season 1, more consistent, but the highs are higher than season 2. So whether you want to say that makes one better than the other is kind of a preference thing. I would probably lean towards season 2 being a bit better in spite of that, just because you care more about the characters now, you care more about the ideas have been developed further. So even with a few kinks in terms of consistency, when it does hit, it hits, it feels really good when it hits. Like, it's feeling more than you did in season 1. So yeah, that was my thoughts on the season 2 finale and the season as a whole to an extent. I mean, it is arguable that there's maybe just a couple too many villains, so I'm glad that they took out Special Counsel before they introduced someone who's higher up. Like, you know, obviously it's just a woman right now, we don't know who it is. I don't think it can be Stanton because she wouldn't be in that position where she's the one calling the shots like this. Seems like a new character. I assume anyway, maybe it'll be someone we've seen before. But I got the vibe they've not cast whoever this is. In the same way that they hadn't cast Amy Acker the first time we introduced Root, and she was just a hacker and we didn't get to see her face. This kind of felt like that a little bit, where you just see the hand and I'm like, okay. And the hand even had a glove, so I mean, they didn't even have to stick to like casting anyone of a particular race. They can just cast whoever. It doesn't matter. So I wonder if that's the case here, is where they're going to cast that for season 3, and maybe they just haven't yet. But yeah, but no, really good stuff, fantastic. Excited to see where we go, and looking forward to seeing. I think it feels like we're going to see more of Root. It feels like she's going to be a bigger part of the show. I could be wrong, but it feels that way, and I hope Shaw's a big part of season 3 as well. So yeah, we're into uncharted waters with the machine unleashed and making its own moral calls, as it were. I mean, literally, it's making calls, but I meant decisions more so. So let me know what you thought of the finale and the season in the comments below. I always enjoy reading some of the comments. You can support everything over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV, and I will see you very soon for the start of season 3. So thank you for joining me. I always appreciate it. Keep watching TV. Have you got any vanilla?